Thank you. It's great to be here again this year. This has become my favorite conference, and I've presented at a lot of them over the years. I've actually been on the rail and transit, the passenger train and rail transit beat for 20 years. I was with the now defunct Destination Freedom at National Corridors for many years. Shortly after they folded, I had the good fortune to be discovered by Bill Vantuono, my editor at Railway Age, and I've been writing for Railway Age for the last 6.5 years. Bill always likes me to begin when I present with a disclaimer. Now, of course, I've been practicing law for 44 years. I know about disclaimers. So the opinions you're going to hear from me, and I guarantee plenty of them, are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of Railway Age, Simmons Boardman, the advisors, the Senior and Disabled Transportation Advisory Committee, New Jersey Transit, the Lackawanna Coalition, the Rail Users Network, or anybody else I'm involved with. But they will represent my own, so you'll have to be guided accordingly. How many of you have heard of Murphy's Law? Okay, see, in New Jersey we have a governor named Phil Murphy, so New Jersey Transit is operating under Murphy's Law. How many of you have heard of O'Toole's commentary on Murphy's Law? Now I don't know who the O'Toole was, but his commentary is that Murphy was an optimist. Now, I wondered for a minute if that might have been Randall O'Toole, the famous anti-rail activist. But in a way, Randall O'Toole did me a favor, because the first time I met Bill Vantuono, he picked up a book. It was Randall's latest anti-transit, anti-rail rant, and said, I have to get around to demolishing this guy someday. And I said, Bill, why don't you let me do it for you? And he said, okay, let's see what you can do with 2,000 words. It was my audition. I guess I passed because I'm still writing for them. But I do want to mention a number of things. And I think one that is very important to me is that as far as I know, and I'm pretty sure of this, I am the only journalist in this country who covers rail, and including covering the advocacy movement, which includes the local advocates where I live, up in northern New Jersey, New York City. It includes the Texas Rail Advocates, which I think is one of the best advocacy organizations in the country, and all the others. Now, with all due respect to Jim Matthews, and he had a lot of good things to say that I'll mention later, his organization does not represent the only game in town. I am on the board of RUN, the Rail Users Network. We have been around for 25 years. I joined in 2003, and I've been on the board since 2005. RUN has its newsletter and mini conferences twice a year. Our next one will be on May 16th. It will be about transit, both some new starts that are coming up, and Dee Leggett, who you just heard from, will be presenting, and the other will be about the fiscal cliff. I've been reporting on that in a great deal of detail, especially last summer. I'll have more to say about that later in this presentation. But if you are interested, go to railusers.net. That's the website. It's free for RUN members, $25 for non-members, but that's the introductory rate for the first year of membership. So if you join the conference, it'll be online on Zoom. You're a member for a year to see how you like it. And anyone who's with an organization, we have organizational memberships too, and I specifically suggest that the Texas Rail Advocates join RUN because we know each other and we can learn a lot from each other. Well, I wrote a column. I write the Passenger Rail Outlook for Railway Age every year in the January issue of the magazine, and this year it was posted on the website, railwayage.com, on January 7th, and to date, it was the grimmest column I had ever written. I hate to say it, but I'm not going to lie. People have asked, some people ask me, why are your columns so grim? My response is, what do you want, journalism or fiction? Things are not good. We might be able to make them better, but things are not good right now. And I want to talk about that a little bit during this presentation. And I'm watching the time because I know that Peter wants to run an on-time railroad here. I think that I'm here to talk about mobility. And that's what trains and transit give us. Now, I want to ask you something. Is there anyone else here who is not a motorist, who cannot have an automobile at their beck and call and depends on transit? Anybody here? Boy, nobody else. This is going to be a tough room. There's one person. So you know what it's like. I am transit dependent. The bus that used to take people to near this hotel, the number 23, they took it off. This place is no longer transit accessible. A couple of members of Texas Rail Advocates helped me with rides from the train, so I got here. But there are a lot of places that are not transit accessible, and we have to make sure that mobility for us, whether it's because we're seniors or because we don't have a lot of money, can't afford a vehicle, or because we have a disability, or because we are non-motorists by choice and would rather spend our money on something other than a vehicle, have that mobility. And I suppose that influences the way I think, the way I write, because I write from the point of view as a rider. What else qualifies me to write about rail? 1,000,000 miles worth. And that's 1,000,000 qualifications. Now, one thing I often do at run conferences, I do the closing, just like I'm doing today. And I'm not going to address the people who talked about freight. I'm strictly a passenger guy. But we heard a lot of interesting and useful things at this conference. I think we can help the people at TxDOT as advocates, give them our input, make sure they know what the riders need, because you folks at the Texas Rail Advocates do know what the riders need. You can be a big help here. I had met Karen Hedlund 3 years ago at an APTA conference that I covered for Railway Age, also met Patrick Fuchs, who is the head of the STB, and Karen said something very significant. Get rid of the 750-mile definition of long-distance trains. I couldn't agree more. It's a necessary reform. There are things in PREA that are just not good. And it will help Amtrak and help the riders if they make some changes. Hope we can. Knox Ross, who I've met with on several occasions, I covered the entire Second Battle of Mobile, the whole war. And Knox seems to have the formula. He stressed the importance of getting elected officials on your side. Without elected officials, you're going nowhere. We've learned that up north as well. And one thing he did say, get those elected officials to ride the train. I pretty much tried that myself. I remember when I first got on the map. As an advocate, it was an APTA rail conference in 2004. Alan Rudder, who you may remember, he was from this neck of the woods, was the FRA administrator at the time. I hit him with some hard questions. That got me on the map. And I walked him across the street in Atlantic City over to the train station, and I said, I want you to know what it's like to ride a long-distance train. I'd like to take you to Chicago on the Capital Limited. When would you like to go? He gave me a dirty look and jumped on his train from Atlantic City to Philadelphia. 3 weeks later, he quit. But try to get those people on the train if you can, because they don't know. It's not that they're being mean, they just don't know. And as advocates, we must educate them. Jim Matthews gave us a lot of very valuable political insight. We have to know about these processes. I did Days on the Hill years ago. That's where I met Stephen Gardner. He was 15 years ago. He was a congressional staffer. I was doing Days on the Hill. And you have to know how the process works or nobody will listen to you. You need to do that to take them seriously. I like the examples that Jim used, Denver, the Downeaster, Virginia. These are the kinds of models that we should be looking at to enhance service. And I think it's good that he mentioned all these things because, frankly, he saved me the trouble. In addition, we had Kevin Keller, state rail plans. Get involved with your state rail plan through your Department of Transportation if you can do it. Michael Sussman talked a lot about communication and innovation. As a registered patent attorney, I know innovation. If we keep doing the same thing, we don't get any improvement. We have to think outside the box. Absolutely essential. And John Robert Smith. John saved me some trouble too, because he laid out exactly what's going on. First time I met John Robert was 25 years ago. We had lunch at Weideman's, the classic restaurant in Meridian, and he told me about all the ideas he had, running a train to Florida on the Florida East Coast, where Brightline runs now, but all the way through, about running from Atlanta through Meridian to Dallas. That might actually happen. He had a lot of great ideas. Amtrak produced maps that had his suggestions in yellow. He was the chair of the board of Amtrak at the time and the mayor of Meridian. He showed me around the town and all the stuff he was doing around the station. It came to pass. Meridian is doing great. His suggestions for Amtrak did not, and they were all good ideas. So it takes pushing. And the local transit people here, you have good transit. You have what I'd call the only really good transit in Texas. So I hope you can spread the word about how the managers here are doing the best they can, except we need the Sunday service on TRE and the Denton County A train. Now, as far as high-speed rail is concerned, Peter asked me to look into high-speed rail. A lot of stuff here I don't understand. In 44 years of practice, the state court decision that I thought was the wackiest was Miles v. Texas Central. That Texas Central is not a railroad, but it's the spiritual descendant of an electric interurban like the Texas Electric Railway. I don't get it, but at least they got their eminent domain rights, but I am concerned about that project. I'm not a booster of high-speed rail, particularly, except under certain circumstances. I don't see this project as being a good one. Everybody along the line hates it. There's no substitution for conventional rail. Conventional rail makes a lot of sense. You really need it. And Houston, 8 miles from downtown and no way to get into Houston. Even our revered train daddy of New York, Andy Byford, hasn't been able to sell it. If Andy couldn't sell it, I don't know who can. The way I see high-speed rail is evolutionary, not revolutionary. Where do they have high-speed rail? Europe, Japan, China. They have conventional long distance. They have corridors. They have local rail. They have streetcars, light rail, all over the place. High-speed rail is the next evolutionary step. When you're talking about high-speed rail for people who don't know what a train is, they think it's science fiction. You'll never get them to spend the money. Give them a good rail system, they'll clamor for it. They'll definitely want it. But where we stand now, it's not great. Transit is in trouble everywhere in the country. This fiscal cliff is a challenge for absolutely everyone who's running transit. Within the next year or two, I think New York and New Jersey will last for about 3 or 4 years before it really gets bad. Other places, it's coming this year. And transit is going to have to meet that challenge, and we advocates are going to have to help them meet that challenge because otherwise we're going to lose a lot of mobility. On Amtrak, the long-distance service, unless they can figure out a way to get more equipment faster than 10 years, it's not going to make it because 75 or 80% of the equipment in service now is 40 years old or more. This stuff isn't going to last 50 years, or at least we can't count on it. What happens then? Trains die by attrition. We already had the first example of it. No more Silver Star north of Washington, D.C. The NEC lost an important connection to places in the Carolinas they can't get to easily anymore. And we lost the Capital Limited. Now, the other day, that train had to be turned at Toledo because it was running so late. Couldn't go all the way to Chicago and turn the equipment. It's a big problem, and calling it the Floridian could preclude bringing back the Floridian they had in the 1970s that went to Louisville and Nashville and places like that. On the state trains, part of PREA, the amount that Amtrak pays to help the states goes down over the first 6 years. After 6 years, the states are on their own. Do you think the states are going to be able to afford trains? They're running out of money now. Look at all the federal programs that are being cut. All those responsibilities will devolve right to the states. They're going to have to look into things like keeping people alive. They're going to have money for trains? I don't think so. And the NEC, the ride south of Trenton is terrible. North of Trenton, the governor of New Jersey is making Amtrak and New Jersey Transit people get together and see what they can do to make that infrastructure work. So that needs a lot of work. And Sean Duffy, the new Secretary of Transportation, is complaining about congestion pricing in New York, and I could see a sense in what he said, now that's in court, New York's fighting it, about the same complaint that Democrats and Republicans are making in the area. Motorists don't like the idea of paying a toll to support transit when they consider themselves better than transit riders. They don't say it in those so many words, but they make it clear. And what I'm starting to see is Marxian-style class conflict in this country, which I never thought I would see. And Vice President Vance and Sean Duffy have both been talking about putting the money for the DOT where there are lots of children and a high marriage rate. That's not the cities. That's where a lot of single people go to cities to get established. So transit's not going to get the money highways are. So that having been said, what can we do? I don't think expansion is in the cards right now. But we're in a situation where we have to all work together. This is the worst crisis that mobility for motorists, for non-motorists, and for motorists who want to avail themselves of transit have had in my lifetime, and I've been a senior for quite some time. So what can we do? We have to join together. This is an all-hands-on-deck situation. Treat it as war. We need to make a war effort just to keep the transit and the trains we have today. We have to make the business case. Knox Ross talked about it. John Robert talked about it. You know, I believe in diversity. I believe in fairness. I believe in social equity. I believe very strongly in the environment. But not everybody does. But if you can go to your representatives, Democrat, Republican, or indifferent, and you can make the business case, as Jim Matthews talked about, then they might listen. Everybody wants more money to flow into their constituency. And if we can convince them that trains bring that money in, we've got a shot. Now, I'm not just talking to advocates here, but if you're in a position where you're selling services to somewhere in the passenger rail or transit business, you need to get on board too, because there might not be anywhere to sell your services if this stuff all dies. I reviewed the 64 applications currently before the FTA on sections 5307 and 5309. Of the 64 applications, only 25 of them have anything to do with rail. The other 39 are busways. Rail is going to have to fight just to keep a market share. However, today is day 78 of POTUS 47. This is a snapshot. I'm very aware of the difference between a snapshot and a motion picture, because the biggest client I've ever had as an inventor does cinema inventions, 48 frames per second. He can bring back theatrical motion picture exhibition. So I know what a motion picture is like. And there are an awful lot of frames yet to go after today before all is said and done. So what we have to do is make sure that every frame of that movie, from now until the last shot of the last scene, is positive, that we are pushing every day for more trains, for better trains, and for more transit. If we do that, we've got a shot, and I think we will win. Ready to join me?